We certainly consider ourselves very fortunate here in Park City, Utah, to have somewhat of an outsized attention paid to us, even though we're essentially a tiny little mountain town. Today, no different in that regard, in that we're very fortunate here at Park City Television to get to spend some time with Utah's Governor Gary Herbert. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Great to be here in Park City.
It's, I have to start out with a question that, in chatting with my good pal Henry Glasheen, the chairman of the Summit County Republicans, he pointed out that unlike some of the stereotypes about Park City and how we're all hippies and liberals up here and that sort of thing, that you actually in this past election carried Summit County against your Democratic opponent, who actually is at the very least a sometime resident of Park City. Talk a little bit about your reflections on being the winning candidate here in Summit County.
Well, thanks to those who supported our campaign, and thanks to those here in Summit County who support the Herbert administration. I think it's indicative of the fact that good common sense and good outcomes are appreciated by all people, regardless of where you sit on the political aisle. And we've had some great outcomes. When you look at the economic development that's taken place, we're now up to 4% growth rate, 2.5% greater, 2.5 times rather, greater than the national average. Unemployment rate is dropping. The fact we're putting more money into education. We gave recognition to Park City High School for their success with ACT and AP courses, etc. So I think there's an appreciation for good results. And we're getting good results, and so I would like to think that all the counties of Utah support the Herbert administration. And they did this last election. They
did indeed. Let's talk a little bit about a couple of issues that are very near and dear to the hearts of the folks here in Park City. And the first one that I know that you've been very attentive on and active on is water quality. I understand that you recently had the summit, is that correct?
Well, we had a conference we have every year. There's a number of different conferences with some of those involved in water throughout the state of Utah. But we're going to have a water summit later this year and really kind of reset the dial when it comes to our projections for the future. We want to make sure that for the next 50 years that we do whatever is appropriate to make sure we have water. Water is the only limiting factor to the growth of Utah, and we are a fast-growing state, so water is the lifeblood. And so we're going to have a real hard, frank, open discussion about our future when it comes to water here in a water summit, probably sometime around September.
Do you feel as though there are a lot of states, a lot of areas in the western United States for which water is already a huge and maybe behind the curve issue? Do you feel like here in the state of Utah that we're in a good position in terms of maybe being a little bit ahead of the curve with respect to, like you say, the long term, the next 50 years or so?
You know, water's always been an important issue for Utah. We're an arid state. When the pioneers came here, you know, they saw an arid state and thought, well, there must be a way if we roll up our sleeves and work together. They were able to capture the snow melt, build reservoirs, canals, ditches, and irrigate. And we've been doing that since the beginning, and the pioneers said, we'll make the desert blossom as a rose. And they've done that. We need to continue to have that same kind of can-do attitude. You know, we have a Slow the Flow campaign where we're trying to do more conservation. Right. And we had a reduction of 25% by the year 2050. Well, I say we're doing well enough. We ought to reduce that. We ought to slow the flow by 25% by 2025. And so we're going to do that. And we're going to then reset and say, what do we need to do to make sure we have viable water and take pains to conserve where we need and do better there, particularly in southern parts of our state where we even have more arid climate. Make sure we develop where we can and where we're capable of, and optimize our utilization of our water to accommodate the growth that surely is going to happen here in the great state of Utah.
No question. So here's already a hot button topic for folks in Park City. And I think you and I are unified in that there is a good reason for both of us to have a little bit of a closed lip for a bit in terms of Ski Link. I'm very careful about what I say about Ski Link. It's early days. There are heavy, heavy emotions on both sides already. And I noticed that there was a quote, a very nicely played, careful quote actually on the skilink.com website, coming from you as far as your general support, and I use that word very easily, but of the idea of a link between resorts, how that can be good for economic development in general, but the jury is out in a lot of ways. Talk a little bit about your feelings and your position at this point.
Well, as we all know, we have one of the best places for outdoor recreation in the world here in Utah. We tout the fact we have the greatest snow on earth, and we do. We do. And I'm just with people here in town now from Colorado who even agree we have better snow. So,
good to hear.
Yeah, really, I think people do recognize we have a uniqueness here and a convenience to get to the slopes here in Utah that you can't find many other places in the world. So we have opportunity to optimize that. The idea of connecting our ski resorts to make it easier to get from one to the other without having to get our automobiles and drive around the mountain certainly has some appeal to it. But it has to be done in such a way that we don't impact negatively the environment, our watershed, our flora and fauna out there. There's probably a right way to do it, and there's probably a wrong way to do it. Ski Link itself is kind of a brand and a specific that I'm not ready to endorse. The concept, I think, is one that needs to be explored. I at least have heard that they're talking in terms of not now selling the property to the private owners, maybe having some kind of easement or right-of-way. Again, making sure we protect the environment in the process. That's something that ought to be explored. But the jury is still out. Is it the right thing to do? Is it a good thing to do? There's certain aspects of it that I think we all could say that would be a good thing. But we need to be cautioned about rushing into it without probably being methodical and thoughtful about the potential outcomes, which might be negative. So let's weigh and consider that in a thoughtful way, and I think we can come to an agreement and build some consensus as far as what we should be doing.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the recent legislative session.
Great.
We're here with Governor Gary Herbert. We'll be right back after this break. Please stay tuned to Mountain Views on Park City Television.